Welcome to the City Council regular meeting for June 4th. The time is 7 o'clock. I'm Mayor Clark presiding. We just completed a Vietnam era veterans pinning ceremony at 6:30 where we honored 11 of our fellow residents and friends as Vietnam era veterans. So that was a good situation. Please all rise now and join me in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A reminder that this meeting is being recorded and it is being broadcast live on our YouTube channel. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Burford.
Here.
Councilmember Sherlock.
Here.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Tallman.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lacotia.
Here.
And Mayor Clark.
Here.
All here, Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. The next item is agenda approval. Any objections or alterations desired to the agenda for this evening? Seeing none, show the agenda approved as written. Next up is public comment. City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
That's okay, he'll call for extras. We'll do the list first.
Thank you. A reminder that public comment, if you're coming to speak at a public comment, please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood. You'll have 3 minutes to state what you'd like to say. The buzzer will sound when your 3 minutes are up and we ask you to conclude at that time. So on the list, Carol Simpson. Come on up, Carol.
Good evening. My name is Carol Simpson. I live in the Vineyards. And good evening, council members and Mayor Clark. I want to applaud the council for your focus on public safety, as that is the most important issue facing our council and our city. Public safety has always been Newcastle's top priority. Ellie Diaz spoke at the May 21st City Council meeting about public safety and the ad hoc committee. She questioned how it was set up and how it's advertised to the public and what is it doing. She was correct in asking about this. Under our council rules, our meaning the city, the mayor does not have the authority to establish an ad hoc committee. The mayor does not have that authority. The council members acting independently of council authority cannot assign community volunteers to an ad hoc committee without the public process, which is approved by council. You might think this is the way the city's always done it, but that's not following the laws of Newcastle. And that's what public process and public safety is all about, following our laws. The creation of an ad hoc committee was not on the council agenda at the March 5th meeting. The March 5th meeting, you had a study session about public safety, and it was mentioned having an ad hoc committee, but the council did not make a motion to form such a committee. So it's now necessary to backtrack. Yeah, sometimes you have to admit you made a mistake. Time to backtrack, put it on your agenda, and do a publicly and transparent process to create a public safety ad hoc committee. You have some handouts you had, give them to the staff. The staff will place that on their meeting and within the meeting materials. They'll also do some research on their own about public safety committees and how they function in other cities and advise you how that works in other cities. And that will be on the agenda. They'll make recommendations as to a motion and maybe the value of different motions or different actions and what should happen, and maybe a date to sunset the committee. And what do you want to have to be the end result of such a committee? So please follow your council rules. They're a guide to an open and fair process in our city and something that we, the public, can understand and participate. And that's what Ellie was asking for, and that's what I'm asking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. At this point, if there's somebody else in the audience, I know there was, if there's a person in the audience, come on up to the podium. And to the city clerk, please. Go ahead, turn on the microphone, Roger, please. Yeah, there you go. When the red light comes on, it's on. There you go.
There you
Got
go.
it.
Roger Hockett, I live at Meadowview Park, up at the southwest corner of the golf course. What this is about is I'm getting ready to post on both Facebook and Nextdoor what you are getting there before you. And so I just wanted to come here and read it into the record. This is about safety on our streets, particularly Coal Creek. This posting is an attempt to simulate a public discussion about what can be done to reduce vehicle speeds and reckless behavior on Coal Creek Parkway, or some call it Coal Creek Speedway. Since Newcastle no longer has a newspaper, this seems like the best community public place to post this data. And there's a sheet of data attached to this front page. Newcastle is one of the few local cities that has a 4-lane expressway going through the middle of downtown, which is also a major commuter conduit to another city. Currently, there is almost zero visibility of Newcastle traffic enforcement to reduce speeds and red light ticketing. Reviewing the data on the attached sheet, one conclusion is, quote, why hasn't Newcastle implemented a proven camera technology to reduce speed on Coal Creek, the city, and discourage red light running, unquote. The revenue from the tickets would more than pay for the cost of implementing the technology. Parentheses, it's a major cost offsetting revenue source for Bellevue. See the data. Why wait for a pedestrian fatality to initiate this? You cannot hire enough costly police traffic officers to catch all the lawbreakers, but cameras catch them constantly and cheaply. Throughout the U.S., cities are moving towards this technology as the cost of hiring traffic officer increases. The legislature recently streamlined the process for allowing cameras. We should be more concerned with how to make our city safer and more livable, and less with, quote, how can we speed up commuting for those who live south of Newcastle, unquote. We need to take a Newcastle first view. It's time for the City Council to address this issue. Your comments and ideas would be welcome for this posting. So I'll just add, I did discover today that you had signed a contract with, was it Flood? Flock, yeah. And I haven't read all that yet, but I did see that that contract is just for finding cars that are stolen or involved in another. It has nothing to do with traffic enforcement. Okay. Two things that come up recently for me. One is going north on Newcastle here a few days ago. Two white high-performance cars played tag going through us as we all went up Newcastle, or Coal Creek Parkway. And traffic was moderately heavy, and these guys were doing like 60 to 70 going in and out of the cars. Number two, I was at the stoplight down here. Whoops, there you go. Okay. Yeah, I was down here at the stoplight in front of the Blazing Onion. And I was in the left lane, stopped at the stoplight. A car was getting ready to turn, going into the Commons, and another car went through the red light at 40 miles an hour. Missed the oncoming car by about 2 feet. So I just plead with you to look at the camera technology for enforcing red light running and speeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Anybody else in the audience that did not sign up would like to make a public comment tonight? City Clerk, do we have anybody online? Okay. The public comment is now closed. We do not have any ceremonial presentations. We'll move on to council comment. We'll start tonight. Councilmember Burford, go ahead, start us off tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Also, thank you for Councilmember Reagan coming to Newcastle as well, and your assistant. Thank you. And I just want to share, I attended some events in the community. First of all, this last Friday night, I heard about Hazen High School. It was their annual, second annual AAPI Night Festival. So immediately I received an email. I got the email at 6 p.m. and I went there at 6:20. And it was a huge crowd. Really, it filled with community engagement, people, everyone was smiling, and a lot of meaningful activities with a lot of families. I got to meet with Newcastle students and families because they attend the school, also talking with people in Renton as well. It was a great event. I hope to see that in our Newcastle as well. And Saturday, in our community at Lake Byron Park, in the morning, Newcastle Arts Council hosted such a fun event with 200 participants. People, adults, children, and mainly from our city and nearby place, they created such a wonderful rock projects. They will be installed outside Newcastle City Hall. We have a rock garden. And also, after that, Newcastle Library's summer reading program kick off was right after. It was really, really heartwarming to see a lot of people. They were so engaged with this really creative artist who were leading the program. Also, the event was sponsored by Friends of Newcastle Library. After that, June 6th was National Trails Day. So I was with Newcastle Trails Association. Peggy and I, we led a tour, also joined by several Newcastle residents. They enjoyed the local trails and answered their questions. And lastly, at the Newcastle Library is our Newcastle Historical Society for bringing the presentation, real world, and the checkerboard landscape of the Cascades to our community. Really fascinating presentation. So informative about the history of our area and Washington State. So just want to share. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. It was really great to see all the veterans here. For me, as the son of one and I guess grandson of two veterans, it was cool I could tell that ceremony meant a lot to those folks. I would welcome that back in the future, of course, and hope we can use sort of, our small power we have as a small city to do things like that mean quite a bit to folks. I want to thank the Planning Commission for all their hard work when they came to be with us an hour and a half early from our most recent council meeting. I wanted to acknowledge too, there was a public comment we got at our last council meeting that I think really should be highlighted. Robert Henry, one of our residents, he often attends in person. I know he listens online when he doesn't, so hello, Robert. But thank you for the update on the DeLeo wall. That was a really hard-fought legal case for the city, and I know it, at least for myself, I'll speak for myself, it was hard to hear when we had to give up that fight and knew that, that forest land had the potential of being clear-cut. So it's great to hear Robert share that the logging permit has expired and that area in the south of Newcastle will not be cut down. Those trees will remain there, and I think that's awesome for so many reasons, so I wanted to highlight that again. And then I want to highlight Pride Month as well. June is Pride Month, and I actually have a motion for the council that I've given to staff already. And I would make a motion that council directs staff to raise the pride flag in front of City Hall for the duration of the month of June, which is also widely known as Pride Month. And I'll be happy to speak to that motion when it's called for.
Second.
City Clerk, question on protocol. So obviously people can make motions at any time. Is that appropriate to take that motion now, or should we wait because it was not asked for an agenda item change? What is your thoughts? Or city manager, one of you speaking?
If the council, he can make a motion at any point, and the council can discuss and take a vote on it. He doesn't, I guess it's not technically, he does not have to put it as an agenda item. That a motion, you can have a discussion. Correct me if I'm wrong, if the council wanted to discuss it and have a back and forth about the motion, but ultimately it would go to a vote.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Councilmember Charbonneau, please repeat your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that City Council directs city staff to raise the pride flag in front of City Hall for the duration of the month of June, also widely known as Pride Month.
Okay, so, and we have a second. So we have a motion on the floor to direct for the city staff to raise the pride flag for the remaining month of June. Essentially correct? Okay. And we have a second. So, Councilmember Charbonneau, you want to speak to your motion, please?
Yes, thank you. So for the last at least 4 years, I tried to ask around about a wider history, but I could not get I could not get the date on that. For the last 4 years at least, when in the month of June we've raised the pride flag in front of City Hall with Mayor Linda Newing, and I believe before that as well, but I couldn't get confirmation. I know I've seen a lot of my friends from city councils on other cities raise their pride flag in front of their city. So I asked our city manager about it. I know Mayor Clark had sort of talked about earlier in the year that there was a desire to not make any proclamations from the city council. And a byproduct and sort of down the line consequence of that later on now, halfway through the year in June, is that our Pride Proclamation had always been the catalyst for city staff to raise the pride flag in front of City Hall. And I think, I saw this and saw a lot of other cities taking action on this, and I wanted us to be able to take action on that tonight. We have a pride flag in the closet. It doesn't cost us anything to raise it. Like I said, I think it's very critical for those, what the data says, 7 to 8% of folks that do identify as LGBTQIA+, to see that in front of the city, and it makes a big difference for those folks. I've worked with athletes that have identified as LGBTQIA in our community, and getting to see them, through a very hard process, figure out who they are and figure that. And when you have a city that's not afraid to do that, a ton of cities all over the county, and I think the county itself taking that step to recognize Pride Month, I would like us to continue the tradition of raising the pride flag. I think it's an easy win, an easy way to tell those folks that we see them and they are welcome here. And yeah, I would like to make that happen immediately and keep it up there for the month of June.
Councilmember Sherlock, you seconded that. Do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Charbonneau. It's a small thing that we can do as a city to show inclusion and help people feel safe and know that their community is behind them. And my thing is, if it doesn't hurt anybody and it potentially can help some people, I'm all for it.
Any other comments related to this motion? Councilmember Griffin, go ahead.
I'd like to know what we're voting on, because I heard a lot of words, but I couldn't understand what was being said, so I don't know what it is that we have on the floor.
Very well. And I will remind everybody to speak loudly into their microphone. So the motion on the floor is to direct the staff to raise the pride flag for the remaining month of June. That's the motion on the floor. Do you have any comments related to that at all?
No, I don't have any comment.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Councilmember Tallman.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Councilmember Charbonneau and also Councilmember Sherlock said. The diversity is the fabric of our community. The strength of our community is in unity. And E pluribus unum is our country's motto, from many one, which means we all stand as one, which is what this city council stands for, is all the people of Newcastle. Back in 1945, the president signed a proclamation to incarcerate the Japanese people because of concerns about public safety. And we took away their land and their property, and we put them in prisons. That day is called Day of Remembrance, and it's February 19th. And we didn't raise a Japanese flag or do anything to support the Japanese people who went through hell during 1945, and these are our citizens that we took away from them. I think it's important that we recognize everyone in our community as one, and I would not vote for this because I think we're leaving out a lot of other people for probably the right or wrong reasons, but I think we should all stand as one continuously every day of the year and support all people of all sex, race, nationalities, etc. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few comments. So when I became the mayor in January, I made a rule that we were not going to do proclamations. Now, people will say, well, they're harmless, right? What's harmless? Well, a proclamation said is a city directs the people to honor, respect, or, support a certain thing or item. Well, what if the people in the community don't do that, right? So if we say you have to support this because we proclaimed it, but certain people in the community say no, then we're disservicing a portion of the community. The most unifying symbol in the history of the world flies over this city council every day. It's the American flag. In fact, 11 people were up here who defended that flag at the cost of possibly their lives. And that's diverse enough for me. That includes everybody in the community, everybody. There's nobody's left out under the American flag. If we raise one flag, we got to raise everybody's flag. Now, somebody will say, well, that's never happened. But there was a ruling in 2022, Shurtleff, and I'm probably not saying the name right, versus City of Boston, where they were letting anybody in the world fly a flag until a Christian group wanted to fly a flag. And then they made up something about, well, it's the Establishment Clause, blah, blah, blah. And the Supreme Court, 9-0, swatted them down and said that's a bunch of baloney. So if we start raising flags, we got to raise everybody. How we want a Hamas flag flying over, the city of Newcastle, or MAGA flag? How about a Trump flag or an Antifa flag? We're not going there, folks. Not while I'm the mayor. I'm sorry. So this is already an inclusive city with an inclusive flag that flies 24/7 over our city. We include everybody. We're not going to exclude somebody, and we're not going to say, well, this group is better than that group, so they get a flag or they get a day. Everybody is equally represented by the American flag every single day. And so that's how it's going to be. Now, my colleagues may vote to raise this flag, okay? That's a fair democratic process. But my vote is no, because we're not going to divide the community while I'm the mayor. And there are people who don't like the pride flag. I know that for a fact. They don't speak up because their house would probably be firebombed or something, but they don't speak up. So why should we exclude those people who don't want to see a certain thing? We're going to include everybody by just having the American flag. And as long as I'm the mayor and I have a vote, somebody can vote me out of office if you don't like how I'm saying that, right? That's your right. It's the citizens. But my vote is no. So with that, we will now proceed to a vote unless there's additional comments. Go ahead, Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. I think what was just said by a couple council members with a lot of whataboutisms and deflection and unnecessarily extremist comparison is that they don't want to support the LGBTQIA community. They could say that in a lot of words, but I think that the actions speak volumes. So even if I anticipate this vote failing, I want those folks that identify that way to know that you matter and we see you as a city. I'm sorry we can't continue this tradition, but I wanted to bring it up as a public issue because it was going to slide under the radar as just something that we didn't even talk about, and I think that would be very sad. So you matter, and I see you.
So I'll rebut that. Nowhere in my comments or nowhere did anybody else up here say that a certain group or community does not seem important to this council, right? I said everybody. That means everybody. That's an all-encompassing term for every single person is important. And they are represented by the American flag. So that's good enough. So you can pretend that we don't like a certain group, but that's not the actual reality. So with that, the motion on the floor is to direct city staff to raise the pride flag for the remaining month of June. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No. Motion fails 3-4. Councilmember Charbonneau, Sherlock, and Burford voting in favor. Okay. Moving on, we're going to continue with council comments. Councilmember Tallman, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mary. we are better when we speak to and hear from our community members, from the citizens. That's what we're here for, to represent you. There have been quite a few comments about public safety, and we're here to serve public safety. And one of the best things that you can do if you have issues or you see issues, whether it's traffic issues or theft or any concerns, is to call the police, 911. The best thing we can do is get it on record. If we get it on record, then we can do something about it. I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but we really appreciate your public comments and your concern about public safety. Please call the police if you have any issues or concerns about public safety. Thank you.
Councilmember Griffin, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I'd like to recognize the efforts that Mayor Clark has put together to bring the veterans of Newcastle forward, recognize the veterans, and pay homage to our veterans, because that's what we're all about.
Councilmember Sherlock, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark, for the wonderful pinning ceremony earlier. That was very cool to have that here. And I'll just also want to say Happy Pride Month. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor LaCoche.
I want to, thank you. I want to share the same sentiments on, thank you for the pinning ceremony today. And welcome to Councilmember Dunn.
Okay, moving right along, the next thing up is Councilmember Dunn. Thank you for coming and thank you for your patience. And Councilmember Dunn represents Newcastle's part of his district on the King County Council, and he's going to give us a state of the county. So he has a PowerPoint that you can follow along.
Thank you. That's perfect. I can read that. It's great to be here. Great to be back here, Mayor Clark, council members. This is a wonderful town with enormous history. I grew up just down the road on Coal Creek Parkway in the Newport area and fought my way out of those tough inner city streets of Bellevue. And here I am. But it's been a great privilege to represent the 300,000 or so constituents we now have here in 2024 in District 9, including 9 cities in Newcastle. And so it's with great pride that I have had the ability to represent this community and seen it change a lot. I remember where Bartell's Drugs is today. There used to be a pasture there with a number of longhorn cattle that were out there, and we used to have fun to go hang out at the cemetery and go up to the missile site. I won't go too far down that path, but it was a lot of fun. So what I try and do is hit all of the 9 cities that I represent every year. COVID kind of messed that up a little bit, and give a state of the county and kind of update on what we're doing in King County. And then I also have nearly 100,000 unincorporated area residents. They don't have a city councilor or mayor, and so that creates an enormous amount of sort of work in a variety of different areas that we do as well. So I think just in terms of governing philosophy, since there's a number of new members up here, relatively new members, is that I want to be the city of Newcastle's advocate. I want to support your priorities as a city in a way that leverages your interests with county resources and county expertise, as well as connecting you with state and federal leaders to best accomplish your goals. I am not the kind of elected leader that tries to substitute my judgment for the judgment of the locally elected city council. And so I will be working with you and look forward to that opportunity. It does help, I think, all of us to see what's happening in King County with our nearly $17 billion budget. We have 16,000 employees in King County. We're the 12th largest county in the United States. We're a large urban county with a lot going on. So thanks for having me, Mayor, City Council members, city staff. So we'll start with this. Maybe hit the next slide. We're going to go through a number of these subject matters here real quick, and then to the perhaps the mayor, if comfortable, will allow questions or not, either way. Just give you a sense of kind of what my assignments are. I serve as vice chairman of the King County Council downtown, and we have a number of committee assignments: land use, the Law and Justice Committee, our Government Accountability and Oversight Committee, the Regional Water Quality Committee, Committee of the Whole, and then I run as chairman of the Board of Supervisors, a separate unit of government, which is the King County Flood Control District, which is about $100 million annually in expenditures to protect lives, homes, businesses, property from flooding, but also where we can, environmental stewardship. And Lake Moron has been a substantial recipient of a lot of those funds over the years and will continue to be so because it is a real gem in the northern part of the district to have the ability to represent. So next slide. The district's changed a lot, and so I now lost a big chunk of Renton just south of Newcastle and gained all of the remaining Enumclaw Plateau, picked up the Eastgate area in Bellevue, and I grew up in that area, so this is all pretty natural to me. The district is it is the most rural. With a combination of suburban, it is quite clearly the most, I think, what you could call it conservative, if that's a term you could even use in King County, of all of the voting districts, just to have a sense of what the demographics are like. And by the time you get down to Enumclaw, it's a very different voting block than you might find in Bellevue, for example. So it's very diverse, very interesting, and creates challenges for me to represent. But I do the best that I can for my constituents. Next slide. All right, let's focus on substantive issues here. We are in a very serious problem with drug overdoses in King County. And this is an issue close to my heart. I've been working on this for a lot of years, but we are seeing an exponential increase in the number. And can you see this slide in front of you? Okay, great. All right, so you can see these are fatal overdoses over the last period of years, and you can see about the last 5 years it has been a dramatic increase. I was able to propose legislation to create fentanyl a public health crisis, and fentanyl is now the leading cause of death for people 18 to 45 in the United States, and it's particularly true here. But it isn't just fentanyl, it's methamphetamine, and when the two are mixed, if you look at that, you'll see that that is a huge problem. And so we are losing around 4 people per day of fatal overdoses in King County. And I had a chance to visit the morgue. We're running out of space. That's a real problem. And for every fatal overdose, there are roughly 6 non-fatal overdoses in King County. And so that is not the trend you want to see. We're doing some things to try and turn it around. Maybe it's starting to work a little this year. The data looks maybe promising, but as we get into summer, that's when you see the lion's share of the overdoses. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Let me show you what some of the things we're doing. This, again, is fentanyl deaths over the last 4 or 5 years. You can see the data, 880% increase. So fentanyl as a public health crisis is important because it leverages public health resources on focusing on the problem. We have a laced and lethal program now that's getting out to the schools, getting out to the public health clinics, getting out to public transit, that's designed to let people know it's just one pill to take a life. And we're seeing this fentanyl mostly coming from super labs in Mexico up through the border, mostly driven by the cartel activity. And that is what is causing this substantial increase. So Laced and Lethal Campaign is a nationally recognized program. We've been given awards for our work in King County, and I'd like to think it's maybe helping a little bit. Next slide, please. Another focus area is one that is focused on making sure that people understand that it's okay to get in recovery. What we know statistically is 90% of people, 90% won't enter treatment because they're afraid of the stigma associated with the disease. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But you do another poll, 57% of the public think that it is a moral failing to have an addiction. You can make sense why people are staying away. We need to break that down. We need to say, hey, it's okay to make the choice to stop using, drinking, whatever it is. And so this Don't Count Us Out program, another award winner, is focused, hey, look, man, people make the right choice. Stop beating people up for making the right choice. Get sober, get healthy. That's important. Hopefully, ultimately, as part of the many tools in the toolbox, we might be able to get those overdose rates down. Day after tomorrow, I'm hosting 4th Annual Conference on Substance Use Disorders, something I started And that's going to be at Highline Community College. We got a packed house already, but if you want to attend, you can virtually online. It starts at 9:30. And that's a good one. We're trying to really bring all the stakeholders together to try and find a way to solve this problem. Next slide. Talking about violent crime, I want to show you about this spike is not just sort of anecdotal. It is empirically measured, significant increase in crime, particularly since the pandemic for a lot of different reasons. Homicides and murders have spiked 73% since 2019. Last year was a record murder rate in Washington State. Firearms violence is driving a lot of that. You can see the medical examiners, homicides, total shots fired. So notice the homicide rate is 158 and the overdose rate for homicides for firearms, 158, overdose rate nearly 1,400. So there's a huge difference in terms of what's claiming lives, but this is also an important issue we need to tackle. You can see the demographic breakdown of what's happening there as well. Next slide. Another problem, and I think these issues are interrelated, is because of the COVID backlog, the inability of the court system, the King County Superior Court, to meet jury trials, particularly in the early days of COVID-19 before vaccine, the court system got way behind. And you'll see they were right on trend, and then you can see what happened. And as that tidal wave of COVID washed in and created a lot of destruction, it's washing back out, and we're seeing, wow, this is what we're left with is a huge backlog in the court system. And so, you know, violent criminals are also delayed in their trials. And we've funded the court system some, and we're starting to see maybe some improvement, but I'm pushing for additional funding. There was a time when sort of the defund the police movement also was defunding prosecutors as well as the court system, and we are turning that around. So I hope we can get there with the court system, because those issues are interrelated. If somebody is prosecuted, if they are flipping and turning on people higher up in a criminal organization conspiracy, and they are being held accountable, the system, what we call an all crimes approach to prosecution, works more effectively, and we're not there with a broken court system. Next slide, please. Going to the King County Sheriff's Office, which, as you know, this is a contract city, and there are a number of contract cities that make up 50% of the Sheriff's Office budget. You'll see that there is a huge increase starting in early 2021 of vacancies. It got as bad as 114 vacancies in the King County Sheriff's Office. That's a huge number. When you combine that with the more than 300 vacancies in the Seattle Police Department, for reasons we can get into, they're political. You may agree or may not agree with why those vacancies occurred, but they did occur, and it impacts our ability to enforce the law. And when you're, again, not enforcing the law and taking an all crimes approach to criminal activity on the streets, you're going to see a rise in crime. That's been measured. Check the Bureau of Justice Statistics website and prove that. But what we're at right now is we're down to 67 vacancies, which is a lot better than 113, but we got a long ways to go. We have provided additional incentives, hiring bonuses, that sort of thing, but we got a long ways to go. We need cops. We need cops in the sheriff's office. We need cops locally, and that's a big priority in what we've been working on. And it's important to point out on this, we never did defund the sheriff's office. We left those vacancies there. We funded those vacancies. We just couldn't get people hired, and that's an issue. Next slide, please. Done some work in actually in terms of investing, $6.5 million for the sheriff helicopter, significant increase for parks enforcement, body cameras, additional stuff for the prosecutor's office, PAO, to help handle these high volume cases. So there has been some good recent investment. Next slide. So there's our budget, $17.14 billion, the general fund, which is everything you think of in the King County, which is the courts, the prosecutor, the jail, 75 or so percent is criminal justice part of it, is an emaciated fund compared to the other funds, which are non-general fund, and those are special levies. The Parks levy, for example, the APHIS levy, for example, all of the things that are narrowly focused on. And then there's capital improvement. So there's a lot of significant challenge in there. There's a fair bit of pork in there, in my opinion. There was a budget that passed last cycle, 6-3, because there were policy disagreements with some very controversial programs, which I've listed there. So now, for a variety of reasons, we're facing a general fund shortfall of $100 million, which is a pretty decent chunk of our about 2.46%, if I'm reading that right. Anyway, so we've got a lot to cut off, and it's going to be even more next year. So our financial outlook is not that good. Historically, the answer at the county level, not that I've agreed with this that much, is to raise taxes as opposed to cut. And so there'll be another big fight coming up because there's been some proposed tax increases coming our way. So that's where we are on the budget. That one that I'm speaking of is a public hospital property tax harbor view, which just got a bond increase a couple years ago. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted on that. Next slide. Community investments. One of the things that is an important part of my job, at least as I see it, is there are substantial numbers of grants that exist in a variety of areas in King County, not just flooding, but all across the board. Various parks, various technology grants, improvements of various kinds to nonprofits. And here are some of the things I've been working on helping to bring those dollars back. You know, and if they're not coming here, they're going to Vashon Island or Seattle or Shoreline. So one of my jobs is to try and bring those resources home to help leverage what you're doing at the city. Here, veterans, youth amateur sports, parks levy, open space, conservation futures. That's an important one out here in these areas around the edges of the city for culture grants and a variety of what we call specific or earmarks, budgetary appropriations. And there we go. Look at that. We've got our city leaders here with one of those big Bob Barker checks from The Price is Right, which is kind of fun. Next slide. Community investments. We were all there the other day. That was fun. What a great regional asset the city has constructed. And, you know, we were proud to help put some money that way too. And there's been some little grants, the Get Out and Stay Active grant here in the YMCA and the Newcastle Pony League and City of Newcastle Waterworks, and then that Lake Bourne Crosstown Trail Boardwalk. We were able to put $500,000 in. So that's the kind of thing, if the city wants substantial help on a project to leverage your resource, that I'll go to bat for. That's an important part of my job as I see it. All right, we got some more budgets coming, but I thought I'd flag that. Next slide. Oh, here we go. Cougar Mountain Connections, Milt Swanson property. You know, if you go down past the golf course, then you take that elbow in there. We were able to get that puppy purchased and preserved right in that area in the borderline between Bellevue and Newcastle. So, you know, give a shout out to Councilmember Balducci who helped work on that. A lot of good leaders there. Some of the same folks working on the DeLeo wall there. So we're proud of that. That's just another example of some of the things we're trying to do in partnership with the city. Next slide. Oh, that's the look I usually have at the council trying to figure out what's going on. It's general confusion. But anyway, so I'm just doing the best I can for this community and for our district broadly. And at this time, if the mayor will permit it, happy to take any questions.
Nope. Councilmember Charbonneau, start us off.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for coming, Councilmember Dunn, and for advocating for Newcastle. I know you always do it very enthusiastically. So two things for you. So you talked about going to bat for different projects. So I wanted to, I guess, advocate and make aware. We just recently moved up sort of with our long-term focus. There is a property on our southwest border. It is sort of, you know, that little, I don't have a great name for it, the red bridge you pass if you were going south on Coal Creek to get into Renton. Currently it's city land. It's not been used for much. It's currently a staging area for Puget Sound Energy, Energize East Side. They've upgraded that a little bit, and we talked about recently as a council and sort of unanimously agreed that we'd like to focus there. We received a $500,000 grant a number of years ago
Yep.
for sports fields. So we're sort of picturing, maybe youth soccer fields, something of that nature there that we think could be cool in the sense of, create something and create a recreation space where there currently isn't one. So any, I guess, help that you can give us in advocating for that would be really valued down the line, I think.
And relative to the bridge, you're talking about the one that goes across May Creek?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where is that property, just relative to the May Creek, I'm trying to think. Southeast 95th is west. Okay, I know where it is. Good. All right. Okay, great, yeah, let's look at it. If you want to shoot me something, Paul, or have Jeff send it over to me, that would be
Awesome.
useful to take a look at. We'll try and help you out.
Awesome.
That's
Thank
a city priority. Is the paint still flaking off the bridge? Do we need to do something with it? We painted it. Good job. All right, I like that.
you. Improvements
It
there.
kept bothering me because we helped pay for that and years ago, and I want to make sure we get that paint on that bridge, so we're doing that. That's good. All right, what else?
Awesome, thank you. And then the other one I have for you was, I really appreciate your focus on mental health. I'm a certified peer specialist and counselor myself.
Great.
And I think something we've added to our strategic plan for like a several multi-year outlook is talking about this larger conversation that's been happening in the region with mental health folks supporting law enforcement. So I know there have been a collective of cities up north in the county with this sort of radar program where, the reviews from the police officers have been they really like working with those folks. We're interested in looking at that and more of the long term as a city. Granted, it's a very hard thing to do for a small entity of ourselves if we're not partnering with the county, if we're not partnering with surrounding cities. And I think there's a lot of strength in, that's why those 5 cities did it together.
Yeah.
So given we're a King County contract city as well too, I think that's something that we want to look at long term. If we can partner in any way on that, I think that'd be really beneficial for us. I won't speak for him, but I believe our police chief, Kajihira, who's a rock star, who's been a rock star for us, would love to work on that.
Radar program. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of radar. It doesn't need to be exactly that, but sort of that
sure.
principle.
Okay.
The mental health and supporting that with mental health folks to support law enforcement. And we've already started to take a couple steps in that direction, added it to our strategic outlook. So I wanted to flag that for you as well.
All right, very well. Thanks, Councilmember. Appreciate your input.
Councilmember Tomlin, go ahead.
Councilmember Dunn, thank you for your service, and thanks for being here to join us and for your presentation. When I want to try something, sometimes I dip my toe in the water and I give it a shot. Sometimes I jump in with both feet, which is more my personality. Fentanyl doesn't give you that opportunity. You dip your toes in the water and you're probably not going to survive. When I hear overdose, I think I can dip my toes in the water, and if I don't take too much, I'm okay. And I'm just curious why the messaging isn't the deaths are the result of poisoning versus overdose. And I wonder if we can change the perception by younger people with, if I see a big poison sign, it gets my attention. If I see overdose, it's old news.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if there's a different type of message that we as a society can change on overdose, besides just going after the supply side, but and the users, which probably don't have a lot of choice these days, but rather maybe also on our messaging and how we might get a different message across to make people think a little bit more about dipping their toes in the water. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, it's a good thought. We kind of went there with laced and lethal. We tried to make the point that, man, this is scary stuff. And that, the way the super labs are using it in Mexico, and they're putting the fentanyl in and not mixing it right and not mixing it properly in a quarter. The edges of the vat have 100 times the lethality because they haven't been properly mixed. And that's the pill that kills, at a party. And we see that a lot. And so I think there is room for, and we've had those years, this is your brain, this is your brain on drugs. We've had all those marketing campaigns, and some of them work. We had Nancy Reagan doing DARE and all that other stuff. I don't know how much that's worked. What I've come to believe is that there are, multiple pathways to recovery. There are multiple pathways to attack this issue. There are the folks that are all harm reduction only. There are the folks that it's all law enforcement only. And I've kind of come to believe you need to have a bit of all of that to make it happen, as well as a good public affairs strategy to make kids think, twice. I have 2 kids. My son's about to turn 15, and, we've had this conversation. I mean, that is just not the right, you don't get a second chance. This isn't your marijuana from the 60s, man. This stuff can kill you. So we'll continue to think about it and also adapt best practices from other communities. The problem is communities across America are struggling with this, and we're actually farther ahead, like with our conferences and some of our work, than most communities. So we're blazing trails here, but I'll take any suggestions. Thank you, sir.
Just one more really quick one. It seems that Pierce County isn't having the law enforcement staffing issues as to the degree that King County is. And I'm just wondering, we can talk about differences or whatever, but I'm wondering what we can do as a community to help affect a greater result within King County.
Well, I think the first thing is to treat our law enforcement and men and women in uniform with respect and dignity. I think the defund, disarm, and disparage the police movement for a while ended up being significantly counterproductive in terms of our ability to keep, maintain, and retain law enforcement. Clearly, there's room for reform within the system, and we need to continue to reform the system. But you can fully fund the police department and also reform some of those practices at the same time. And so what we're fighting against, in my opinion, is, particularly down in Seattle, was some really tough rhetoric that made all kinds of officers retire and move on and take bonuses. So we're going to have to do work and spend way more money than we needed to rehire and bring these bonuses back. And I think we need to bring some dignity back to the profession, because our communities can't operate without our cooperation and partnership with law enforcement. I think it's where it's got to start. Thanks, Steve.
Any other questions? Anybody else? Well, I have a question for you then. So you mentioned that there's a little bit of a budget shortfall, and perhaps you would have to raise some taxes, but let's assume the taxes hopefully don't pass. But what would you look at? How would the city of Newcastle be impacted if, say, you have a budget shortfall? And what should we be concerned about anything, or should we ask you to lobby for something that might be cut? What's your thoughts on how Newcastle could be affected?
Well, you could be affected through the sheriff's contract if we have to cut officers. We want to make sure that there's full staffing at the sheriff's office to provide you with the resources that you need. The direct grant appropriations could be lessened. The partnerships on things like the court system, prosecutors, public defenders, could be lessened. I think, having managed through a number of interesting times, the Great Recession is one in government. Also, that initial part of the pandemic where we had depression levels of unemployment. There is always, in my opinion, room within a budget, particularly at King County, to trim. I'm very concerned about the direction that we are seeing from the executive branch in terms of just closing office buildings and having most county employees work from home. They're still working from home. The King County Administration building is closed. You can't get in there if you want to. Floors of office space are now gone and rented out. I can tell you right now that it is incredibly hard to get feedback, work done, work product from the bureaucracy. There needs to be an attitudinal shift. And we could riff or get rid of a significant amount of employees and probably not affect our work product. So my hope is that through what will be a cantankerous budget discussion, that we're able to make those necessary cuts without affecting performance. And as a rule of thumb, I've learned usually about 10% you can cut pretty easy. And then another 5% you can sort of do if you have to. After that, it gets really, really hard. But what you don't do is take the easy way and just go raise taxes again, in my opinion.
Okay. And I will kind of second what Councilmember Charbonneau said. We do, as a council, would like to see a little more emphasis on the you know, that empty space that's on 95th for a sports, I mean, it's kind of, it's unused. There's been community kind of interest in, you know, developing that, and it would be also a regional asset, frankly. It wouldn't just be for Newcastle, but a regional asset, and that would be a good investment for this part of the county, honestly, because it would get people from around to come in, and we could, you know, have sports facilities available. So it's something to consider, and
Yeah, but I'm more than happy. I'll agree to partner with you right now. It would be good if maybe the city could send me a letter, just kind of identifying the location of the space, kind of what your long-term vision is, and then there are a number of funding mechanisms. Conservation Futures is one. We've got a parks expansion levy project we can do their general fund appropriations, and sometimes it's a multi-year thing where we get you design money. We can get, you know, if it's not, is it already in city ownership right now or not?
yes.
That's great. Okay, so then, yeah, design, construction, build funds, capital. You should see some of the work we've done farther down in my district, like Ravensdale Park is just incredible, you know, regional asset. Up in Preston, they've got another one along Interstate 90. There's a lot of good stuff. And there will always be a few people that will complain about, you know, improving a park and, you know, the sound of the horrible sound of the laughter of children, you know, but that's what you'll have to deal with it. Your important job here. But we will definitely partner with you on that. But send me a letter, then I can use that, shop it around, and see if we can get some money.
I'll do that.
Great.
Councilmember Sherlock, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Dunn. Just to, again, piggyback on that, I've been looking at that Preston facility. My son tried out there this year. He didn't make it, which is maybe we dodged a bullet there, but it's a beautiful facility, and I know that it's owned by King County, but partnering with that East Side Football Club.
Yep.
And so, I'm not saying we could do that exactly, but I think I would love to learn the history of that, because I'm assuming there was a lot of progression over the years. It wasn't just built the way it was overnight, right? You started out in a lower level phase, and I think that's kind of where the discussions with this council have been. We don't want to do too much right away. We'd like to kind of see what we can do that's feasible, you know, initially.
Yeah, well, we have a saying, right, in government, it takes about 10 years to build a building, you know what I mean? And and with the parks, and maybe it's true, maybe 5 or 6 years, but you know, you kind of do incremental. What you'll do is we'll put pressure on the legislature, the 3 legislators here who we all know. Let's get a little something from you and from the senator, and then you got to hit your county councilman up, and then what we do, we get the members of Congress up, and you know, add maybe some of your investments, and then the specialized existing grant funds that are, I mean, we're talking, there's some big money like Conservation Futures to try and do that, and it layers on layers, and pretty soon you have a really substantial regional asset. I've got some people who, and you know what, it usually takes 1 or 2 or 3 just great leaders who are driving this forward, and sometimes they're elected, often they're not. They're also able to do a public-private partnership where they raise $1 million or so bucks to help make it happen.
Yeah.
I encourage you to go down farther into my district, just east of Maple Valley is community Ravensdale. It's it has as much history as Newcastle. It's quite special. And see the incredible sports facilities we built down there. But I would caution you, we recently had a Sasquatch sighting down there, so you need to be careful.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
You may or may not know the answer to this question. The county bought the Renton Inn some years ago, made it a homeless place. It appears to be vacated, fenced off, and nobody's there. What do they do with that property?
Well, it's a complete disaster, and it's an example of a failed policy down there. When we, initially it was purchased, sort of as a COVID sort of stop gap place, but I think we're in the park. Are we going to buy it now? Did we purchase it already? Because I know we were renting it for like $330,000 a month. We finally bought it, but it's just a mess. And the issue is, it was the Econo Lodge now in Kent is hot right now. So what I don't like and what I don't want to see for Newcastle is King County coming in, buying a building, and then telling you what the use is going to be and getting in a big fight over that. That doesn't work. It's not going to work. It's never going to work. We saw 1,000% increase in police reports around that building after it was opened up as a homeless shelter. Okay, it's not the right answer. And we can get into another discussion about the King County Regional Homeless Authority and the problems there, but I guess my advice to this city is, and we need place for homeless people as well, and I don't deny that. And we need to be thoughtful and sensitive to it, but what I would do is on this city's significant building structures, you want to make sure that they aren't being sold for a use that you don't have any idea is, and particularly with the county. I propose legislation that we require the county to notify community 30 days before a purchase and sale agreement was agreed to for that purpose. And of course, the council majority buried that because they don't want that to happen. But just let's watch it carefully. The city should decide the city's future, not King County.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Dunn, for showing up and talking to us. We got a lot of good insight. We appreciate your support for our city, and we know that we can reach out to you, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Anytime. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And by the way, my Chief of Staff, Cody Eccles, who's a lawyer and an MBA and is way smarter than me, and he's also available to help out on the issues as well. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. Okay, moving on in our agenda, mayor's comments. I just have a couple. I want to thank the veterans who came tonight for our pinning ceremony, and I want to thank my comrade Dave Wagner for coming and helping me. He's rather a legend in King County for veterans activities, and it was good to see those people be recognized. And we had one person who was in the audience who wasn't even planning to be here, and that was the Roger who spoke at the public comments. So I recognize him as a veteran, and it's awesome. We got him up here. So if anybody knows of other veterans in that era, please bring that to my attention, and we will do it again. Right? There's plenty out there, I'm sure. So that would be great. So I got an email from Amy George outlining the dates of our various summer events. And she's asking me if I would say a few words at the beginning, but I'm not going to be here for all of the events. So I'll pass this on to the council members and ask if anybody'd like to volunteer to, like, for example, at a concert, say welcome. For, you know, I don't care. Anybody's welcome to do that. So I'm not going to be here for all of those. So just I'll put that out so the council members can take a look at that. Just to comment, and he left already, Roger, the public commenter, but I know we are looking at camera technology for speeding, right? So that is an ongoing thing. I was hoping to tell him that, but he's gone. And finally, the ad hoc committee. So every person in Newcastle with a mailing address registered got a letter in the mail explaining about the ad hoc committee back several months ago. I know everybody doesn't open government mail, and so they probably didn't all read it, but the explanation for the ad hoc committee, when, what, and how, and why, was crystal clear if you chose to invest in reading it. So the committee's up and going. They're doing awesome work. We put out a bid for people to be on the committee. We did interviews, and now we're going strong. So that's where we're at with that. Okay, next on the agenda, council committees. Finance committee, anything to report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Finance Committee met on May the 23rd, where, just didn't stay on that. Can you hear me now? Anyway, Director Chambers, she brought the monthly snapshot for us. We're looking pretty good there, a little weak in the development fees. She also brought an investment report which showed that we're doing very well with the investment with the way the interest rates are now. And we had a look at the budget calendar to see what we got coming up in the budget era this year. Then we had Director Chambers gave us a a look at the Center of Government or Innovation, a checklist for preparing and reviewing cash basis finance statements. And they now have the 2023 year annual statement, all according to the cash basis for the innovation. Like we spent a lot of time on that. And that's pretty much what we covered. We got a couple of ideas, but we're not ready to share those as yet.
Okay, thank you. We had we didn't have a formal meeting, but the Salary and Benefits Committee, as I mentioned in our last meeting, has been discussing. We had a meeting initially with the city clerk about consolidating various parts of our personnel policies from resolutions and so on into the personnel manual. So over the last couple of weeks, we've exchanged some emails based on some corrections and some suggested changes. So far, we're in unanimous agreement, and the city clerk is going to be making those changes. It'll be back to the council for a review soon. Okay, so regional committees. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Go ahead, Councilmember Tillman.
In response to public request, I'm happy to announce that there is a write-up on our city's website now about the Public Safety Committee. It's on the home page under Community News. It's also under Your Community and Public Safety. And thanks a lot to our City Clerk Westman for support on that. Regarding our meeting, we had our third meeting yesterday. We met with the prosecutors, and now we are ready to start to discuss issues, evaluate them, prioritize, collaborate with the police department and the community members, and then start making recommendations to the city council. So we are moving forward in a very positive, strong way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tillman. Regional committees, any regional committees? Okay, the only one I have, I guess, is I had the North Mayor's meeting today. It was sparsely attended, and there wasn't a lot of discussion on the agenda. Mostly we talked about how we're going to spend our summer vacation, so it was kind of interesting. Moving on, there's no commission reports. We're up to city manager report. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. A few things. I just wanted to call to your attention, and I'll invite Director Bronze to add anything if he deems necessary. For the T47 project, the Southeast May Creek Park Drive non-motorized improvements. Put notice out to the community that one lane will be closed and rerouted while they make those improvements. Working with the contractor, it was a way for them to get the work done quicker as opposed to traffic control and letting one lane go and then stopping and letting the other lane go. So I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that, but signs have been out in the community, and then Amy got social media notices up. Councilmember Burford was able to get a first-time attendee scholarship to attend the AWC conference. And so unless there's objections, we'll let the conference know that she'll be our voting delegate for the business meeting for the conference, since she'll be the only one attending as far as I know. I did just want to piggyback a little bit on the mayor's comments. The public comment from Roger, he mentioned the license plate readers. He was correct. Those are very specific cameras for specifically for specific incidences, not for speed, not for running red lights or anything like that. We are looking into the speed cameras. There's a lot of information going around as far as what the speed cameras could bring in as far as revenue. I want us to be cautious about those types of things, simply from the standpoint that with our contract, we need to understand what that means with our contract with with Mercer Island Court. We have a very favorable contract where, depending on the overall revenue, sometimes we see a couple $100 a year in revenue from the court. But the kicker for the benefit of our contract with Mercer Island Court is that we don't owe them anything. And most courts all over the place, state of Washington or otherwise, don't make money. And so the fact that we don't owe them anything to run the court is significant. So as we look at speed cameras and the benefit that they may be or the revenue they might provide, we need to be cautious about what that means with our contract. And then if there's questions from the council as far as ad hoc citizen committees and where that section is, and our council policy is happy to send that out to the council. That's all I got.
To follow, questions for the city manager, excuse me, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilmember Tom.
Just quick question, City Manager, on your last report under community development. I think whenever we bring these things up, it's important to have as much discussion as possible just to keep everything aired and open. You made a comment in your note that in addition to other things, staff will be addressing historical barriers placed on BIPOC communities from before the city was incorporated. I'm just curious if there are any current policies that are barriers to the BIPOC communities that you're aware of.
Not that I'm aware of. We'll have to, so I think most of that work has been done. We did it through our missing middle housing grant. But we'll have to show that work and meet that requirement from the countywide policies.
Right, okay, thank you.
The city manager mentioned, asked to ascertain if there's any objections to Councilmember Burford voting for this body at the AWC. Any objections to that at all? Seeing none, then that's approved. Okay. All right, the consent agenda. Any objections or alterations desired to the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, show the consent agenda approved unanimously. There are no public hearings. There is no unfinished business. And our general business item 12.1 is our draft presentation of the 6-year transportation improvement program. Director Bronze, I assume that you have something for us.
Good assumption, Mayor. Thank you. And I'll just start off with just to add a little bit more detail about what City Manager Pingle mentioned about that closure. So we did have the option to not allow this closure, but the alternative would be single lane with flaggers, so everybody would have to delay while while the one lane traffic went through. We figured it was a better alternative to get the project finished quicker. So the situation, it starts on Monday, the 10th, and will go through August 2nd, which is a Friday. So eastbound traffic will continue undelayed, and then westbound traffic will, when they approach the roundabout, will then be diverted up through Coddington on Southeast 84th Street and then to 116th. So if you're continuing north, then just pretty much no delay. And if you're continuing back, then you'd have to backtrack through 116th. So the biggest impact would be to residents in Wintry or living along May Creek Park Drive that are coming from the east. If you're going to and from the west, it will be no impact. Okay, so the business item we have before you, each year we bring the 6-year transportation improvement program, or the 6-year TIP as we like to call it. It's a 6-year plan. So for the new council members, we'll go over these items here. It's kind of a quick oversight. The one thing about the TIP, it's a planning document. So anything that gets put onto this plan is not committed. It's just an intention. It's required by state law. The RCW states that cities are required to provide an annual update to the Secretary of Transportation, DOT essentially, every year. And it's a requirement for grant funding. So if you have typically for a transportation project, one of the criteria is that it's listed on your 6-year TIP. So just the background, I'm not going to necessarily read all of these, but these are the elements that go into the, so you think about, you've got your 20-year plan, which is the comprehensive plan, which we're doing a major update this year. That has a master list. That's kind of every project you would conceive in the next 20 years. And that was last updated in 2019 and then 2020 with the master plan there and the capital facilities appendix. And then each year we do a 6-year rolling planning document. And last time we reviewed it was adoption of the TIP in last July, and then as part of the budget. There's no minimum or no maximum number of updates. Like comp plan, you're legislatively limited to the number of updates per year, but the TIP, you could update it every month if you wanted to. So should something be omitted or something needs to change or some grant comes up that's unexpected, you can certainly quickly add a project to it to make sure it's eligible. So this is a copy of the item, the draft TIP that is in your packet. Yellow indicates a new project, proposed new project, and then the orange shading indicates a change in funding. So I'll go over each of those in detail. So 2 added projects. The first is non-motorized improvements on Lake Washington Boulevard. This is T34. And this would consist of a sidewalk and planter strip and bike lane on the east side or the uphill direction of Lake Washington Boulevard. And this was included previously on the 2022 TIP, but it was unfunded. So you can put projects on the TIP that don't necessarily have funding just so that they become eligible should grants become available. And then another project that's listed but not any funding is just kind of put on here for council discussion. I don't remember the exact year. It was before COVID. That's kind of like the demarker, before or after COVID. And we had the downtown strategic plan, and a large component of that was public realm improvements to kind of revitalize the downtown. And one of those was the Southeast 70th Street, Green Street and Plaza. I'll just go into the next slide. There's a couple slides that go a little more detail about that. So these are the locations of these projects. Lake Washington Boulevard, I think most people know where that is, and the Green Street, this is the private street on next to Tapatio. So Lake Washington Boulevard, this is a little quick simulation of what that might look like, putting sidewalks on the east side of the roadway. Not much more to talk about there. And then this is the private street between Coal Creek Parkway and 132nd. As you know, we increased the schedule for the proposed signal at Coal Creek Parkway, the T44 project. That's currently slated for construction in 2026. And there's not necessarily a linkage with these two, but they kind of feed into one another. Once there's some public investment on the intersection, that would kind of potentially drive more traffic down this street. One of the key components for this to move forward, in the vision, if you were to go back and reference the public realm, it was kind of thought as like kind of potential market street. You could have street vendors or food trucks, things like that. So making it more of a open plaza that would accommodate traffic, but also potentially a little bit of market. You could potentially have a small farmer's market or something like that. But any of those discussions would have to start with a conversation with Hanson Brothers, because they're actively using that street for storage and parking of their vehicles. So based on their current usage, that would kind of be a blockage to this project. So it would be kind of something to keep in mind should their property redevelop. Probably about 7 years ago, they did come in for a redevelopment proposal, and I'm not sure whatever reasons they decided not to move forward with that, but there's past history for that. 2 revisions. You heard a couple council meetings. Somebody talked about requesting improvements on Southeast 76th Street. We already have a project proposed to add a sidewalk from 116th down to 113th. And then this TIP adds a second phase to then continue that sidewalk and bike lane down to the city limits. And then the only change, the Newcastle Way project is already on the TIP, but we split out the final design and construction over 2 years instead of 1 year. The summary, not much difference between the last 2 years. Basically, call it even, 0.7% decrease. And when you see a shortfall, I'd call it just even. It's $180,000 under, and that's over 6 years of forecasting. So that's well within the margin of error of any of the numbers shown on the table. And just a reminder, nothing in the capital would cause us to go into debt. If funding changes, we just delay or cancel projects. Just an update on the construction costs. Things have turned a lot better. A few years ago, we were seeing very significant cost increases and unpredictable bids. The bids we received on all 3 projects this year were very competitive and within our engineer's estimate. For the city of Seattle, the costs have been flat for the Q1, and over the last 12 months, they've just been within normal inflation, 2.3%. And then financials, we received really good news a few months ago. We have a $600,000 grant for our pavement overlay program. It's federal funding, and one of the situations where I was going to say that I won't go into the reason behind it because it gets complicated quickly. But anyway, they had a situation where they needed to obligate more federal funding, and they were looking for people to take federal money. And since we had maximize our points, we only had a 50% federal funding, so we had an extra capacity to take that. So our grant received an extra $442,000 just because we happened to be able to do that. So that was awesome news. So now the grant is just over $1 million instead of $600,000. And then we've got the similar grant for online for 2026, and we've applied for $1.2 million in 2028. Next Tuesday is the meeting with the regional leaders or the regional staff members where we will rank the projects. So cross your fingers for next Tuesday and maybe we'll have some good news to share. So this is a time to kind of have discussions. This is all the information with the shading removed and then the financials below. I know it's a lot of information and the numbers are small, but basically the years are across the top, the projects are in the rows and the intended spending. And then down at the bottom shows a high-level forecast for the funding. And it starts off with the beginning fund balance that's forecast for next year. This is looking a year and forward of $863,000. Then it shows the forecast REIT revenue, impact fees, contribution from surface water management. So projects that have stormwater components will be funded by the surface water management division. So those are typically, it's about 20-25% for roads projects like that. And then anticipated or known grants, and then it shows the accumulated cash flow. So you see after year 6, it forecasts, given these assumptions, a negative $176,000. So out of $22 million, that's essentially a wash, it's even. And then we just continue to monitor this each year. So our next steps are to bring this forward at the next council meeting for adoption. We have to have a public hearing. And then as part of we talk about transportation capital, and this kind of sets the stage for going into the budget. And we also have traditionally talked about 6-year plans for stormwater and parks. We're not required by state law to have a submitted plan, but we have a similar table for stormwater and for parks. And we will talk about those at the next 2 meetings. So turn it over to questions. I'll bring it back to this table since I figure this is where most of the discussion or questions will be.
Okay, thank you, Director Bronze. Who has a question for Director Bronze? Councilmember Tallman, start us off.
Thank you, Director Bronze, for the presentation. A couple of questions. On the southeast 76th sidewalk extension down, you said we're going to take it from 113th down to city limits.
Correct.
At that point, does that meet the existing Renton sidewalk?
No, there's one property gap of maybe 75 or 80 feet.
Okay. Are we coordinating with the city of Renton on that project so that we can keep our people safe that are going all the way down?
We haven't yet, but we will if this continues forward. One of the things that project is, it's a single property owner, and I'm guessing that they are, well, I'm guessing, we haven't talked to them, that it's a lower priority for them, and that if that property develops, it would then get the sidewalk put on it. But yes, that would be one of the things we would do, is coordinate with them.
So is that a conversation with the property owner or with the city?
With the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Second question, on the light project on Coal Creek Parkway, that moved up. So I have a couple questions because I'm new and I think that's been in discussion for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a completed study that supports installing a light at that intersection and recommendation?
We have a completed study, and that was done in 2020, right before COVID. And so when you put in a signal, there's what's called a signal warrant, and it's a structured process, and there's at least 7 warrants. Basically, in order to put in a traffic signal, you don't have to, but the recommended guidance is that you meet at least one of these warrants. Some of them are accident history. Some of them are the difference in volume. So if you have a very high volume street and a very low volume street, which this one does, basically, would a signal provide enough gaps? And when that analysis was done I believe it used 2019 numbers, it did not quite meet the warrants. And the expectation was that as this project gets closer, that we would rerun the analysis. Because when in 2019, the Newcastle Commons was less than half occupied, and now it's fully occupied. So the expectation was that once the Commons was occupied, there'd be additional traffic demand that would then meet at least that minimum warrant.
Okay. And what conditions drove that project to be moved up?
Council request
Okay.
during I'm not sure if it was last year's TIP or 2 years TIP, but it was during this same meeting, either last year or 2 years ago. I think it got moved up by 1 or 2 years.
Okay, so city council voted on it.
Yes.
And then, does that project include changes to the 70th Street, like mandatory changes in eliminating parking and
No.
making that a through street?
No.
And then when you're talking about the Hanson Brother property, are you talking about maybe I missed the detail, but are you talking about a right-of-way, or are you talking about purchasing the land for?
So that 70th Street Green project, that was talking about purchasing that and then making improvements. Currently, it's all 100% private.
Right.
And the expectation with this signal project would be that we would approach, let me go back to that slide. So if you can, I'm not sure if you can see the kind of the rust-colored lines in there.
Yes.
Those are the property lines. So you can see Hanson Brothers, the east half is all owned by Hanson Brothers.
Right.
The west half is owned, the north side is owned by the Carbon Apartments, and the south half, it's 2 parcels, but it's the same ownership. That's the Coal Creek Shopping Center. So the city's position currently is that for the signal to go forward, number one, it expected to meet warrants. It doesn't have to, but that's the expectation. And the other expectation was we would reach out to the property owners to talk about a financial participation and also have them dedicate this western half to the city. So it'd be a public street.
Okay, so.
That would be the only structural change. There wouldn't necessarily, we'd probably have to update the curb ramps because they probably don't meet standard, but not any other significant change to the street itself.
So would it be fair to say that we have quite a bit of work to do relative to that private street and how we could make that a safer place for cars coming and going off of Coal Creek Parkway? Because that's a pretty tight environment. If there's cars parked on both sides to come off of Coal Creek Parkway, whether you're coming through a light or not, it just feels like we have a lot more work to do before we start talking about putting a light in terms of how we develop that private street.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. The parking, that's not under city regulation, so there's no control over the parking. So if that were public, it'd just be a simple matter of putting up a sign if there's a problem where vehicles are parked. So like I said, those 2 cars that are shown there are probably too close to the intersection, but since it's private, none of the city codes apply to where they're parking.
Okay, and no work is proposed into going into the Safeway parking lot either?
Well, that was one of the options. So you can't see here, the Safeway driveway is offset a little bit to the south.
Right.
And that was one of the alternatives that there's a presentation that was given to council, I believe in early 2020, right before COVID. And we had a design firm that looked at different options and include the signal study. And there was several signalization options. One was to have an offset signal, whereas it would be fully signalized both directions, the Safeway parking lot and this private street, but the 2 legs would not align. So what that would mean here in particular is that the left turns could not go coincident because they would conflict with one another. Another option would be to realign the two legs so that they do align, so it would be a single intersection, and that would involve more cost because on the Safeway side you would take that leg and move it to the north. Now there is property there, but it's in a slope. So I would expect that when this project comes forward, we would we would relook at those cost differentials, because I think that's a superior alternative, but it costs more because you have to rebuild the west leg of the intersection to align with 70th Street.
Okay. I guess I just have one more. I'm sorry, guys, it's getting late. So is there any proposal on the table to address the leaving Bank of America and QFC onto Coal Creek Parkway, either right or left hand, to prevent people from trying to cross all the way?
So as part, if the signal part goes forward, we would likely put in median restrictions so that you could either no left turns between the signal and the signal at Newcastle Way, or restrict them so maybe it'd be only a left in and people could not take a left out.
Okay.
So that'd be part of that project.
And there's no proposal on the table for us to do that regardless of the light project?
Not currently.
Okay.
It's one of those things where you could do it, then it's going to concentrate efforts to this intersection, and without it being signalized, it's just a matter of trade-offs, frankly.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Griffin, go ahead.
In answer to Councilmember Tallman's question, was there a study done on this? Yes, there was. The results of the study were given on the first meeting in 2020 in January. My first council meeting was, we got a report on the study that was given that time.
Councilmember Sherlock?
Thank you. And just also some history, Councilmember Tallman. There was that study which, one thing I remember, because it was my first meeting as well, one thing that I remember well from that study is they were saying, well, no one's trying to cross the street. And it's like, well, yeah, it's a 5-lane highway. Of course they're not trying to cross the street. That doesn't mean, to me, it doesn't mean that people don't want to cross the street. It's just that they're not able to right now. So that kind of stood out to me a little bit when we had that study report. And then additionally, there was also discussions over the years about the downtown strategic plan. When that work was being done, there was a lot of walking tours that were held, and there's a huge amount of feedback from the community during that process of the downtown strategic plan that a signal or some form of a signal or crossing was highly desired from the community during that process. So that's just another part of the history. It's all, we all got to weigh everything, but I just wanted to let you know that there's some other, not just, there is the study, but then there's other information with the downtown strategic plan as well.
Does that study state that nobody crosses that street or wants to cross that street?
It was just that was one of the things they were counting, was how many people tried to cross the street, because that's part of the, if people are trying to cross the street.
That can be one of the signal warrants if you have
Exactly.
a high pedestrian volume.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations where anecdotally there's probably more people cross than you actually see, because the traffic study was based on the signal warrant analysis. That's what the traffic study was based on a snapshot in time of some traffic data. So it's typically one day, the peak hours, so you're only looking at a snapshot.
Okay, is that study available online
Yes,
somewhere?
Actually, yes, it would be in the council packet for that January meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then I had a couple questions. Director Bronze, we have received over the years requests for sidewalks in the Wintry area, and I just wanted to ask you where that falls on here. I know that we've talked about this before, and there's a lot of non-motorized improvements happening on May Creek Park Drive currently, and I believe the plan right now is to get through those before we were to go to these to the Wintry's kind of off the main road. So is that still part of the plan?
Yes, Councilmember Sherlock, the philosophy was we started off with improvements with Newcastle Way. We extended the sidewalk out to the firehouse, and now currently we're just beginning construction to extend it on 112th out to the city limits to the north. So that will continue, and that will end that, or connect to Bellevue sidewalk, so that completes that linkage. And then on May Creek Park Drive, a couple years ago, we built the west half of May Creek Park Drive. We're connecting the west central part right now. And then that's T47. Then T33 we built several years ago, connecting from Coal Creek out to Edens Grove. And then the last remaining gap, this T33 project here, it's budgeted to do design this year and then budgeted for construction next year. That would complete all arterials with the exception of Lake Washington Boulevard, which is the project I mentioned we brought back on the tip, and that is right here, T34, and that's out here in 2029, 2030. That's an arterial, so I would weigh an arterial higher than 121st, higher volume of cars, higher speeding. But that being said, I could certainly see an opportunity to potentially add a sidewalk project somewhere in between here, maybe either fit it in here or push this out a year to accommodate sidewalks on 121st. I'm guessing the project cost would be maybe $250,000 to $225,000. A project like that, it's already got curbs and gutters on both sides. Depending on the width of the road, we may be able to narrow the street and add a sidewalk like we did on Southeast 73rd a few years ago, where we added sidewalks along Donegal within the existing roadway section. So we could certainly look at that.
Okay, thank you. And then also on May Creek Park Drive, the road kind of bends a little, and there's, I believe it's the Waterline Trail that's crossing. Is that Waterline Trail or May Creek Park?
Waterline.
Okay, so anecdotally, it's where there's some horses there. If you know, so if you know what the horses are along May Creek Park Drive, I've actually had several people, probably over the last 6 months, mention to me how dangerous it is for pedestrians to cross there because there's no striping, there's no lights or anything, and I personally have noticed that when I drive along there, I've been surprised. Like, and I drive the speed limit, but I'm still surprised because of the way the road bends, and I think there's a grade, and so I would be really interested in looking into some sort of a flashing crosswalk there. Doesn't have to be the most expensive thing, but I just feel like I've heard from enough people that I just wanted to bring it to the council's attention, and it seems like a good thing that we should do for our community if we can fit it in the schedule.
Sure, there's a combination of vertical and horizontal curvature there. We added signs and added reflectors to the existing signs as an initial step. If we were to do we have had requests for a crosswalk. We've been resistant to do that for a couple reasons. One, just a plain old crosswalk by itself, I think, leads to a false sense of security, and people are going to be more alert without the crosswalk. So if we were to put in a crosswalk, we'd do exactly what you suggested, is the flashing beacons like we have out here on Newcastle Way. We call them RRFB, which stands for Rectangular Rapid Flashing Beacons. And those are present at the Waterline Trail right here in front of City Hall. So that's something we could look at. I would probably consider that a trail project because it's a trail crossing, and we could utilize something like the P5 project, which has funding in it. The cost to put in an RRFB, all things considered, would probably be about $15,000 to $18,000. So that's something that we could accommodate with the current budget. We wouldn't consider it a separate project, but just part of that existing program.
Councilmember Sharman, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I know this is several folks talking, Councilmember Tallman now, but I will say explicitly, the Coal Creek Parkway signalized improvement, that was my motion and idea. I got moved up 2 years from 2028 to 2026, purely because that was what Public Works Director Bronze told me was feasible and what they could do and would all work. Public Director Bronze, you were making sort of like hand signals directing towards the council. I want to be really cognizant of the public though, and I think this is a great public project that I want them to be able to see. You had two good visual representations when we were talking about this a year ago of sort of the options of, you talked about like the smooth sidewalk and also the two different options for this specific project T044. Can you bring that image that you presented to us then to June 18th? Because I think that'd be helpful for folks So you're not, for new council members and also the public to.
Right now, or?
No, you just,
Okay.
I think for June 8th, for the next meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, I think
And
for the next meeting, that'd be
Sure.
really helpful.
And what was, I'm sorry, you said, I know what you meant about the offset intersection, but you mentioned a smooth sidewalk, or I'm not sure what.
That might not be the wrong term, that's me not being a public works junkie, but you had a visual representation of the two options,
Okay,
is what I should say.
yeah, I can definitely bring
Yeah,
that.
yeah, okay, awesome, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I think that would be really helpful for folks, as well as we can talk offline if you want to about the reasoning for that, but it was unanimous support. I think it's just really quickly for the public, I think it serves several needs, whereas we talk about speeds along Coal Creek Parkway. If there's an additional light along Coal Creek Parkway, that is naturally going to slow people down. It gives a safe exit for folks coming out of that QFC parking lot. And I think it does a lot to just have more general safety with folks crossing and all that. So in my opinion, I view it as a win-win-win. Several pieces of feedback for you. I think there's a lot of really great things in here. In terms of the revision, the 76th Street, that hill, that is another really dangerous place to walk because the elevation really disrupts the sight lines of folks, right? If you're crossing and someone's coming up or down and you can't see them. And even the uphill bike lane as well. I mean, I would love to meet anyone and work out with that can bike up that hill. But especially we're building that transit infrastructure down at the bottom part of the hill in the Renton area, so I think that is great. Newcastle Way widening is great. The even additions of lighting to Lake Washington Boulevard for the reasons Councilmember Shaddock mentioned is really helpful. And the sidewalk and the bike lane, that's two really, I think, dangerous for pedestrian places to walk that we are checking the box on that as a city, and I don't want to, I feel compelled to mention that because if you have walked both those places, you understand. Those are both dangerous spots to walk, and we have it in our agenda. I know from the town hall, these are issues people brought up, right? The sidewalks and where they can walk. And then the other question I had, I don't think anyone's really given it to you yet. I know you're seeking feedback on Southeast 70th, Green Street and Plaza, the T065. I'm a fan of it. I think that keeping in mind working in, maybe not necessarily in tandem, but in supplementing the project that's going to go on with putting a signal there, I think it's a really savvy thing to do. My piece of feedback would be, I think this would be a really strong grant contender if we haven't talked to our lobbyist about trying to advocate for that to our legislative delegation, simply because one, we're showing intention, right? We're like putting forward our own money for a project that is sort of preceding this, or would definitely be preceding this. There's an economic development angle if we talk about the public plaza. There is a public safety angle if we talk about sidewalks. And there's a community partnership angle. I think there's a lot of good arguments that can be made for it. I would be happy to help advocate and make those arguments, but I think that would be a really, it's currently unfunded. I would be in favor of keeping it in there, and then let's try to get funding for it. Let's try to talk to the legislative folks. Let's try to talk to, shake all the trees we can to see what happened there. And then you mentioned there's another upcoming meeting where you're talking with, what is it? You mentioned a separate meeting where.
Yes, for the King County Project Evaluation Committee is there's two transportation grant programs. There's regional projects, which ETP decides on, and then there's countywide, which is basically city projects. And so there's a long meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, the 11th, where we're going to rank all the projects. And so the city's grant application for the preservation group will be, likely the outcome will be known after that meeting.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any way we could support you in that meeting?
Thank you for offering. No, it's pretty much, that one is based largely on the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index ratings, and then just where the other cities shake out. I don't want to be too optimistic, but I think there's 13 projects submitted, and there's funding for 11 or 12 of them. So the competition is much less. There's more opportunities this year. Less projects were submitted this year than last grant cycle by far.
Awesome, thank you. I do like those odds mathematically. Yeah, so I think in summation, there's a lot of really, really great work, and I'm excited. Great job on this.
Thank you very much.
Public Works Director Bronze.
And thanks for reminding me that when the signal project got changed to priority, I couldn't remember the year.
Other Councilmember Burford, go ahead.
I look at here about Newcastle entry monument. I don't see the just say future years, and I feel strongly that we used to have the historic Newcastle Welcome to Newcastle sign, and it's part of our Newcastle city's identity. And right now it's like buried, it's in the commons area. I'd like to see Juan. Can you tell us more about this? And also, thank you so much for your presentation and answering all the questions. Thank you.
Certainly, you're welcome. That was another project that was discussed years ago, and it actually kind of relates to the Signal project. The city received, I believe, as a commerce grant, and I think it was strictly for some business development. And so an artist was hired to come up with some concepts that were presented to council, and it consisted of a I don't know if I'd quite call it a sculpture, but basically an entry monument, and the proposed location would be in the median right just south of the 70th Street. And so there was funding for that, and it got voted out probably maybe 18 or 19, a couple years before COVID. But one of the things we could do is take that into account, and we would take that into account with the Signal project, is to not preclude and kind of have a space for it. Especially if we were to do the median. So I talked about changing the left turns, and that would involve putting a median in Coal Creek Parkway. At a minimum, would be raised curbing, and that would be the place where an entry monument, that was where it was slated to go, is right there. So that would be one of the things, and that's strictly just a matter of priority where the money wants to go. I'm not sure if it necessarily be a transportation funding. We don't necessarily have it'd be a other. We don't have an other CIP necessarily. It's not necessarily facilities, so it seemed to fit since it's on a road. That's where that project landed. But
yeah, right now not under a certain year. Do you have any ideas like by which year? So we are going to pursue that.
No, it's just up to council discretion when to provide the funding. So that's why it's just parked there as a kind of placeholder.
Yeah, I really hope Newcastle is not just like drive through. For so many people, they even don't know Newcastle is a city. So it's really important to have our identity, city's identity,
Certainly.
To be visible. Yeah,
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. One thing I could propose is that you could tie that with the Signal project, or at least slate those together, so you could have the same contractor, or at least put in. You'd have an artist do the monument, but a contractor would provide the base and the electrical. I assume there'd be lighting, and that could be part of the Signal project. Either at a minimum we could plan and put those facilities in with the Signal project, and then either coincide with the monument or at least have it ready to go for a future monument.
Thank you. I think that sounds great. I hope to see that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll ask a couple questions. Thank you, Director Bronze. So I like all the emphasis on sidewalk and pedestrian safety. That's great. Especially 76th Street. I think now that we're the improvements made at exit 7 down there, we should, expedite our way to connect to that, honestly. So the T57, I think that's good. That's good timing for those projects. The T34, right, maybe I personally would like to see that come up a little bit. And if you could explain 54 and 55, right? So at the golf club, so that's that steep hill right above the fruit stand. Is that slated for, was that a roundabout? Was that the final decision there? And also on 123rd, where there's presently just no light and there's people just shoot.
Sure.
What's those?
Yeah, so the at Golf Club in Newcastle Way, I'd love to put a roundabout there, but I think just the geometrics, it's not really feasible due to the hill coming up. So that was proposed to be a signal. And that could, certainly it's not meeting level of service right now, but it's not really, I wouldn't consider calling it a problem. It kind of serves, to me, it serves as a ramp meter. So where the level of service failure is in the PM peak, the afternoon peak hour in the southbound direction. And you may have been caught up in that. Well, it's fine right now because the road's closed. But starting next month, they just announced the date. So they announced the week of January June 10th. And they just today sent an email, the opening ribbon cutting is going to be at 1:30 next Monday, and then they're going to open it up after that. They said they're going to have maybe a couple weeks of one lane traffic, but it'll be open, should be, this time next week it'll be open. So that is planned for a signal, but nobody's really advocating for that, so that could push off. It wouldn't bother me at all. The 123rd, that is to address, I'm sure many of you have been caught there, a vehicle turning left into 123rd, and the proposal there would be to put in a left turn lane or a roundabout. Roundabout's a little more challenging on a three-leg intersection, but the one thing is about a roundabout is then it eliminates the possibility of a T-bone intersection, collision rather. So that's what was slated. I can bring those slides to the next meeting when we had like a little graphic. That's what the proposal for T55 is. T54 is just straight signal at this point.
So then personally, I would like to see the T54 slid back and T34 moved up. Can we, maybe 2 boxes so the T34 becomes a 27, 28 project? Is that feasible? And
Certainly.
54 goes back to 28, 29. Any objections to that on the council up here? Sure.
I'm not opposed to that, but I am curious if that would affect what I was asking about the Windtree sidewalk project.
I don't think so. We would fit that in somewhere. And one of the things I didn't necessarily call it out, but the very bottom line there are totals. We try to balance that out. Just number one for cash flow. Actually, cash flow is shown down below, but also just for workload. So like this year, it's kind of a little crazy. Carrie's managing 3 projects, and it just happened that way because the right-of-way delayed T47, and then the pavement management got a little bigger with that grant. But yes, we could certainly accommodate that.
Okay, thanks.
And the Newcastle Way widening, I mean, that also could probably slide back a little bit. I mean, Newcastle Way,
Right, and actually, sorry if I interrupted there. So there's a project to widen from 119th to 128th, and that whole stretch. And the idea there for that 2025 is to do about a 30% level design, which would help guide the T55 project. So that's why that's there. And then the 28 and 29 would be final design. So that could certainly push back. But I would still recommend keeping that initial 250, which is preliminary concept level design, in advance of the T55 project to help guide what we might do for that intersection.
Okay, fair enough. We talked last year or even 2 years ago when we discussed moving the signal up to 2026 that we would have, that we all agreed up here that the May Creek Park Drive work would be done before we started. And it looks like is that still the case where the May Creek Park Drive stuff will be done by next year?
Correct. Yeah, the plan is that we are going to design the last phase to close the last remaining gap, which is from the roundabout to Eden's Grove subdivision, is this T33, and that's slated for construction next year.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you, Director Bronze. Any additional questions or comments? So we asked you a lot, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And just to summarize, so the proposal is to move T34 up 2 years. Just take the numbers here, move them to 27, 28. Take the T54 and move it back 2 years. And then look at placing an unnamed or unnumbered project on 121st somewhere in between 25 and 29.
Correct. And then the Newcastle Way, perhaps sliding it back because you're going to have a year with a ton of money being
Correct,
spent.
right. So move the T58 back potentially, or make that fit in.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. I think getting the sidewalks in and is the priority for me anyway, so. Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So that concludes our general business. Next up is additional public comment. City Clerk, do we have any public commenters? Oh, excuse me, before Director Bronze, I have one extra thing, excuse me.
Sure.
2 questions, I'm sorry, forgive me. Thank you. The T65 Hanson Brothers, that roadway, that's all contingent mostly. If that was a standalone project, that's really contingent on Hanson Brothers like either getting out of there or giving us the space or something, right? Because the market you envision.
Effectively, we could always condemn it, but that's not envisioned, that we would do that project in partnership with them, because to try and kind of force this project through with them still in their current land use, it's not really compatible.
And Councilmember Sherlock said something that you and I have talked about that flashing light at the trailhead.
Yes,
By the
yep,
So
yep, exactly.
I'm sure there's still, I mean, I know you put in the signs and we discussed the whole evolution of that, but I totally agree with her. And I think that however we decide how to budget it, we should look at a flashing sign there. I think that's still an issue even with the sign improvements that you made. So.
Sure, I agree, and I think it was just trying to go incremental steps. When we talked, we could currently sort of done that, but continuing to hear that feedback, and we're going to reduce the speed there, but it's still, I think that's ultimately, and be consistent with the other crossings of that trail further to the north. So we can make that happen with the current budget in the P5 this year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, now, additional public comment. We have people signed up, so a reminder about public comment. When you're called up to the podium, please state your name and neighborhood. You have 3 minutes to talk about whatever you'd like. The buzzer will sound when the 3 minutes are up, and we ask you to conclude your comments at that time. So, Christian Kritzinger, come on up.
Hello, my name is Christian Kretzinger, and I live in the Newport Woods neighborhood of Newcastle. First, I'd like to start off by acknowledging and thanking Councilmember Charbonneau for trying to make our LGBTQIA+ members of our community feel more welcome and included. The council and the mayor claim that increased community engagement is important. They also claim to listen to the Newcastle citizens. Well, that's a pretty easy claim to make when the majority of the people who engage agree with you, or at a minimum are very similar to you. It is no wonder that huge portions of our Newcastle citizenry don't engage when you demonstrate that you don't truly listen to and hear people in person or through the robust available facts and data regarding their experiences in public spaces and what would help them feel more welcome to engage. It is wildly disappointing that there's not going to be a pride flag raised at City Hall this year because of a demonstrated fear of actual inclusion under the guise of we are all one. While that is a noble idea and one that I hope we all strive to continue to work to attain, it has not yet been fully realized for all of our citizens in Newcastle or this nation. And we cannot call ourselves a great nation, a beacon of freedom, if we are too weak to acknowledge where we can continue to improve. And this is certainly an area where we can continue to improve. Do better. Be better. To any members of the LGBTQIA+ who may be watching, you matter. Your voice matters. You are welcome here. If you don't feel welcome, I will carry your message. Happy Pride.
Thank you, Christian. Allison Sweeney.
I don't even know how to follow that. It's on the same topic. Apologies for my appearance tonight. I've been to the gym, I've been working, cleaning, and I was in my kitchen making dinner when I was listening to this meeting and had to come right down. This is a section of the mission and values statement the city sent out with the notice for the meeting tonight. I'm going to go down to the second paragraph. Our guiding vision for the community is that of a diverse, safe, and tolerant and economically viable residential and business community with the foundation in strong neighborhoods, family values, trust, respect for the natural environment, and the appreciation of its history. I'm going to be honest. I'm landing here tonight on 3 words: diverse, safe, and tolerant. How can you call yourselves leaders if you aren't willing to lead our residents towards these values? Representing our diverse community, being tolerant of those differences, and keeping those who may disagree safe, and keeping those who live under the pride flag safe. What a shame that you yourselves hide behind the fear of re-election for ensuring that a small subset of your community feels safe and welcome here in the city you claim to represent. I'm curious, the flag has been raised for years. Have there been complaints to the city? Has somebody been threatened that their house would be firebombed for speaking up? A history lesson for those of you who appreciate our military and what we as a nation fight against, from sftravel.com. The pink triangle, once imposed by Nazis to identify and persecute homosexuals, has been reclaimed in the 70s as a bold symbol of our remembrance and action against persecution. It is widely used, often alongside or superimposed upon the rainbow flag. Tonight, I'm here so that those of you watching or will look at this moment on YouTube later on know that you have a friend in me. You have an ally, and my door is open when you find other doors have been closed.
Stephen Yimes.
Sorry, a little taller. My name's Stephen Vimes. I rent in the Walker's Run condo complex. There are a lot of issues facing Newcastle that I would like to speak on, but after hearing some of the council members' arguments against raising the pride flag, I feel like it's necessary to respond and add my voice in support of those who support the initial motion that was proposed in front of the council. Because I want you to know how callous your comments sound. To Councilmember Tallman's example of not raising the Japanese flag in support of Americans of Japanese descent who were unconstitutionally interned in concentration camps, we wouldn't raise another country's flag because they were Americans. That's the whole point. If they had a flag that was dedicated to those people, I think we should raise it. If you, sorry. Into the mayor's comment following that the American flag is the most inclusive thing that has ever existed. You said it immediately after your colleague proved with historical evidence that that is fundamentally untrue. So I ask you to really think about why it offends you so much to temporarily raise a flag in support of a group of American citizens who have been historically demonized and vilified. Raising this flag should have been a way to say to our community and family members that we see you and the struggles you face every day. If raising more flags to support others is required for that to happen, then I, for one, am all for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else in the audience would like to make a public comment? Come on up.
Hi, Carol Simpson from where do I live? The Vineyards. Okay. I wanted to speak to the 6-year transportation improvement plan. Thank you, Jeff, for your thorough presentation. Some of these projects are very familiar to me. I have a lot of history on those. And I wanted to speak about Newcastle Way and Coal Creek Parkway, that intersection. Is Lakemont still closed?
It reopens on Monday afternoon.
Pardon?
Monday afternoon it reopens.
They'll reopen. Okay, so maybe deferring traffic count until everybody knows it's open and we get a realistic traffic count, because the closure has really affected what's happening. That is really an alternative route to 405. If you've ever been westbound on 405 in the afternoon and want to get off at Lakemont, or if you want to come over 405 southbound, forget it. If you want to come from Bellevue southbound on 405, you want to find another way. I mean, it's terrible getting up and down 405. And Lakemont to Coal Creek and south to Duval and 4th is an alternative route for people in Maple Valley and Black Diamond, for crying out loud. They're driving through Newcastle. So we need to look at that at an appropriate time. There's one other project. Oh, the intersection over by where Pam Lee's property is, and they're going to be doing development. And that intersection comes in at an angle to southeast the Golf Club Road. That's a very poor intersection. You really have to crane your neck around to look. It's dangerous. It needs to be changed to a 90-degree intersection opposite Newcastle Commons. And that needs to be added to the list of projects, whether you're going to do it in the next 6 years or whatever. But this is going to come up very soon when you look at the comp plan, because you're actually adding projects to the comprehensive plan as you're adding them this. So it's part of not just the 6-year, it's part of the 20-year. So that'll be coming up, and that's going to come together this summer. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. Anybody else? City Clerk, anybody online? Okay, that concludes our second and final public comment. Planning calendar, City Manager, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. For the June 18th meeting, we'll adopt the updated TIP and talk about the Stormwater Management Capital Improvement Program. Those are the main things we have on for June 18th. And then a busy meeting for July 16th. We'll have study session to talk about the IRF program. We'll present that and walk the council through what that looks like and why. We'll also have a sustainability model discussion to look at the 6-year forecast. We have specifically tried to leave July 2nd open so that the council had the opportunity to cancel that meeting if they so choose. Several of you have indicated you won't be here on July 2nd. And so if the council wants to cancel that meeting, I would invite you to do so now. We also usually cancel the first meeting in August, which is August 6th, for a National Night Out. It would be a good time to take those actions if you'd like.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to do what this city manager suggests? Deputy Mayor LaCourtia.
Yeah. I move to cancel July 2nd council meeting as well as August 6th council meeting.
You meant to say in lieu of August meeting for National Nights Out?
Yeah, for National Night Out and July 4th, the 4th of July.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to cancel the July 2nd meeting, first meeting in July, and replace the first meeting in August with the National Nights Out. So, Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to your motion? Councilmember Schrock. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so the July 2nd meeting has been canceled, and the first meeting in August will be canceled in lieu of National Nights Out.
So one other thing, the council's talked about having a second town hall. And so we would love to nail down a date for that as soon as possible, just so that we can get it on the schedule, we can get it reserved. We had talked, just in general, we had talked about August, September as we get into, before we put a preliminary budget out. Staff would like to suggest either taking the place of the second meeting in September or at least that week. Selfishly, I don't like the second meeting in August because that should be my annual review. The first meeting in September, then we're getting a little more detailed into the budget before we put out a preliminary budget at the end of September. And then that Saturday after that meeting is Newcastle Days. And so we don't want to try to put together a town hall right before Newcastle Days. And so we like the second meeting in September if the council is amenable to that. And we can start making those plans.
Right.
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering if the council would consider potentially doing it on a different day of the week, just because some people just can never come on a Tuesday night. And if we want to get more different people to come out for these things, it's really, in my experience with, school events and PTA meetings and trying to get people to come, I've had great success when you mix it up a little bit on the day of the week. A weekend would be awesome, but even just a different day of the week, people would potentially give it another look. Because a lot of times people are like, you know what, I got whatever on Tuesday nights, I'm just never going to be able to make it, and they just don't pay attention. So just a suggestion.
Propose a day. Wednesday, Thursday, what do you think?
Yeah, Thursday, I don't know.
Any thoughts?
Or open to suggestions.
Okay, let's discuss this. Any thoughts? First of all, does anybody disagree with having it the second meeting of September? Okay, so we'll replace the second meeting in September with the town hall. Now we just decide, is it going to be on the Tuesday night or, say, Wednesday night? How about that?
I think I think at the very least doing it a different weeknight would be good, because you'd get potentially a different cross-section of people that if they're not attending, if they can't do Tuesdays, they wouldn't see council meetings or a town hall. And we want folks to come to the town hall that might not be able to come to the council meeting. I would be interested in I'd be interested in having a conversation of what a Saturday would look like as well. If, I know it's not fun to give up your weekend, but that would make it potentially more accessible for folks you might not get on a weeknight whatsoever, if that makes sense.
So I propose this. So we know that we're going to have the second meeting in September to be a town hall. So why don't we come back to this meeting next time? People survey your friends, family, neighbors, find out what day of the week would be preferable. Maybe it stays on Tuesday, maybe it moves. I personally would be opposed to the weekend, but if there's enough groundswell of demand for that, let's find out. So we've got the date move essentially potentially on that week. We'll just figure out a day. Does that work for everybody?
Can we pencil in the 17th, just so we have something on the books, and then have the discussion during the next meeting?
Yeah,
or does it make sense?
We can plan on, I don't know that we need to take action on canceling that council meeting right now, but we'll plan on town hall taking the place of that meeting.
Okay. Do you have anything else, city manager? Any other questions for the city manager? Okay, so next up on our agenda is we're going to be having an brief executive session, and I found my notes here somewhere. There will be an executive session this evening to discuss with legal counsel pending or potential litigation pursuant to RCW .30.110 subsection 1 paragraph I. We will convene into executive session now, and we will be approximately gone for 10 to 15 minutes when we will return to chambers. Okay. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And I would request that the city manager, city attorney, Director Bronze, and the city clerk all join us in the executive session.
We should pick a specific time to return to chambers, so maybe 9:23.
We will return.
9:23.
We will return not to exceed 9:30. That recommend?
I'd recommend best practice identifying a specific time that we will return, and then we will extend out after that.
Sure. Okay. We'll return to chambers at 9:25. Thank you.
Yes.
We're locked in?
We'll get mad about
Hello. Hi, for all you still here, the council's still in there discussing. There'll probably be another 5 minutes, so return to chambers at 9:30. So just to let you know. There you go. It does that.
Okay, the city council has just returned from an executive session to discuss with legal counsel pending or potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 paragraph I. No action or votes were taken during this executive session. It was informational only. Okay, that was the last item on our agenda, so we are now adjourned. Thank you.